great honor to introduce tonight's guest speaker, board game designer Rob Daviau. Rob has designed dozens of tabletop games for a variety of markets, while at Hasbro, he designed many themed versions of classic games such as Risk, Trivial Pursuit, Clue, and Stratego. He's well known among hobby board gamers for his role in designing titles such as Heroescape, Risk Legacy, and Betrayal at House on the Hill. And Risk Legacy is the topic of his talk tonight. Rob is now president of his own company, Iron Wall Games. He most recently co-designed the cooperative game Pandemic Legacy with Matt Leacock, who's the designer of the original Pandemic, which was just released at Essen about a month ago. Just to give you a sense of the feedback that this game and the buzz that's being created by this game, I went on to Board Game Geek, which has a huge database of gamers rating various games, and it's rated the #1 thematic, in other words, a game with a strong narrative, the #1 thematic board game in the history of the world, and it's only been out for about a month, so that's pretty impressive. I actually last night sort of converted the ratings to a Rotten Tomatoes score, and it's 97%. So, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In 2011, Rob started this all off by creating Risk Legacy, which is a sort of a reimagining of the classic game World Domination Risk. And this game sort of challenged a lot of assumptions about what a board game should be and how we should play it, how we should experience it. I'm not going to say anything more than that. Yeah, don't think on my phone. Yeah. But both Risk Legacy, just one way in which they're innovative, and this is, I think, not going to give anything away, is that both Risk Legacy and Pandemic Legacy are games that you have to kind of include spoiler alerts with, which is something that you don't really think about with board games. So if any of you, after hearing this, want to go and play Risk Legacy, there's somebody in the back who'll bonk you on the head and you'll forget everything in the talk. I never even considered putting spoilers in. So, so you don't have to worry about it. But I just wanted to, at this point, turn the stage over to Rob Daviau. So please welcome Rob.
All right. Well, that sounds a little loud. Thank you very much. Today's talk was going to be just about Risk Legacy, because that's been out since 2011, but Pandemic Legacy, which has been out for a month, has been on my mind a lot, and it's gotten a lot of attention. So this is really going to be a talk looking at this thing of legacy games, which is an idea I came up with a few years ago, and how it's different from regular board games, what it tries to accomplish, what it does accomplish, and why so many people hate them and love them, and sometimes both at the same time. I would like to point out that I am not qualified at all with anything having to do with psychology. I'm a board game designer, and so I just played around with what I thought would be interesting motivational hooks and engagement hooks when designing a board game. I think of myself as a storyteller foremost, and I just happen to work in board games. With that said, I don't want to talk about things you already know, and I don't want to not talk about things that are relevant to the talk. So just with a show of hands, who considers themselves like a board gamer? We got most people, some people are more psychology based. Who has played Risk Legacy? About half, so you're going to have to sit through the discussion of what it is. Who's played Pandemic? It's a good game, you should play Pandemic. This is going to be the smallest subset. Who's played Pandemic Legacy? Come on. It's been out for a whole month. Alright, so this behind is me. These are the types of things that I do. This is going to be a little harder because I had to convert this to a PDF so I can't see what's coming next on the screen, so it'll be really exciting with a few occasional pauses. I've been designing board games since I was hired at Hasbro in 1998, and this is the title of my talk. During that time, I have designed, co-designed, been involved with, done editorial support on some number of games that I have a hard time counting because not all were published, and if I did yet another version of Monopoly, does that count as work designing a game? But it's probably somewhere between 60 and 80, a few of which I have highlights, and if I remember correctly, may or may not be on the slide. Yes! These are the ones that if you're into board gaming, I'm most well known for. I did a lot of Risk games. I did Clue Harry Potter. I've done children's games. I'm getting to the point where I talk at colleges where people are not only saying I played these games when I was a kid, which makes me feel old, but I'm starting to get to my older brother played these when they were a kid, but I was too young for it. What unites the games that I tend to design, or the games I certainly highlight here, is theme. I fell in love with role-playing games and comic books the same week at summer camp when I was 11 years old, and I just became a sucker for storytelling, immersive storytelling, serial storytelling, and especially with Dungeons & Dragons. Anyone here D&D or other role-play? Oh, good. I love seeing that in 2015. It blew my mind. Some people were just sitting around. They didn't have any books. They didn't have any dice, which is usually two things you need to play D&D, along with paper and Fritos and Mountain Dew. And so they were just talking about something, and other people were telling them what happened. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm playing a game. I'm like, no, you're not. You're standing around in some pine forest in Maine. And they're like, and they started talking about Dungeons & Dragons, and it blew my mind that you could tell a story, and then someone could take control of the story, and then you could, go back and forth and collaboratively tell a story together. And so a lot of my games really work hard to accomplish this. I want my goal in designing games is when you talk about the next day, if someone overhears you, they think that you might be talking about a TV show or a movie or a book you read, and they would be surprised to find out it's a game. So I did this until about 2000, for Hasbro until 2012, and they moved my job, and I couldn't follow, so I set out, and as Doug mentioned, I'm the president of my own company. What he didn't mention is I'm the only employee of my own company. So as an independent contractor, I have consulted and spent the past couple of years designing games. It takes a while to go from concept to execution and then publication. And so the first one out is Pandemic Legacy, which completely sets unrealistic expectations of any game that I do for the rest of my career. But it's in the good way, I guess. Anyone ever played any of these games? Thank you. A lot of them were co-designs. Hasbro was a very collaborative community, but I had a lot of fun designing them. I really have a soft spot for Clue Harry Potter. That was fun. What was interesting is you could die in that game. And, well, I wasn't sure. So I wanted Hogwarts to be scary at night. This is where it gets into storytelling and how to kind of coax it out of a board game. And I said, well, if you get caught in the hallway, do you want this to be the early Harry Potter where you get kind of a slap on the wrist and you get demerits, or do you want it to be late Harry Potter where you die? Right? And they couldn't tell because it was supposed to be the whole universe. And I said, why don't we just say that you lose HPs and never define them as house points or hit points and let people decide on their own? And I think that's what the final design went with. So you can set your own gruesome level for the game. But really what I want to talk about today is two games that have the word legacy on them, Pandemic Legacy and Risk Legacy, both based on established games. I have another game coming out next year called Seafall, where I invented the whole game from scratch, which embodies this legacy system. And if you look on Pandemic Legacy, it says Season 1, given its success. I'm already on Season 2, working on that. What makes a legacy game different? This is really hard without knowing what's coming next. So, what makes a legacy game different is that there's a couple things. Some of the actions that you take in one game will permanently carry forward to future games. So you may be asked to write something on the board, or you may be asked to rip up a card, or put a sticker on something. So in Risk, which is a war game, you may want to put up a defensive bunker to protect yourself from an attack. You would have a card, it would have a sticker on it of a bunker, you would slap it down in the territory you're defending, you win the battle, that sticker stays on the board, and for every game played on that board for the rest of the time, there is a bunker there. Just like the Great Wall of China is still there today and did not get reset after the first attack, right? And then move around to different locations. So this created an object permanence in board games which hadn't been seen up to that point, although it was very popular in role-playing games. If you play Dungeons & Dragons and you do something and you get a sword, then you have a sword at the beginning of the next game, and if you die for a while because it's not fun, and then they find a way to bring you back. So it was taking from a lot of different locations. Today I'd like to talk about, actually, does anyone have any questions before I go on? Or is anyone sort of viscerally upset with the concept of writing on a board and ripping up a card? Because these are all acceptable responses to that. Okay, question or viscerally upset?
Yeah, upset, yeah.
Okay. So we will be covering a large part today of why this is upsetting to people. To me, the thing that upsets people about permanent change is the exact reason why other people find it compelling, that you cannot have one without the other, because actions have consequences. And like in the real world, if I decide to go punch someone right now, I couldn't be like, well, I kind of tried that, but now I'm going to back it up and not do it because I didn't like the results. And so it raises the stakes, but it makes some people kind of uncomfortable. And that's what we're going to kind of look into and talk about.
I just had a question regarding the fact that would it be hard for new players to start playing this legacy after certain things have happened on the board? So let's say you want to play a couple of games,
Yeah.
and then I think, well, this game's not really cool, I want to get into it. Would it be hard for me to get on track to it?
Yeah, it's a storytelling device. And so it's the exact same thing that would happen if you heard about a TV show we were watching and you wanted to come in on episode 7. Right? And we could give you the backstory, but you wouldn't feel it here. You'd be like, what's that character again? Like, no, he's the one who's... Okay, never mind. Right? And you would learn it, but it wouldn't be integrated. So the assumption with both of these games is it would be played by mostly the same people most of the time. You can float in, you can float out. There's also an assumption that with both these games, you've played the base game before, because both of them start very similar to, like, Pandemic Legacy starts very similar to Pandemic. And you're like, oh, I played Pandemic, and you start playing, and then we say, haha, here's how it's not Pandemic anymore. Right? It's all going to be very vague. They're different. Risk is very competitive. I've heard it described as a psychological experiment about how well you react to odd probabilities of dice rolling. Like you have the odds, and then you just roll a bunch of ones, and you lose. And I believe it's the original table flipping board game. I've worked on a lot of Risk. I have a soft spot for Risk. It was the best game to apply this to at the time. And I think a lot of people who play Risk Legacy say it makes Risk better, although some people hate Risk so much it will never be better, and that's fine. Pandemic is a cooperative game where it's you versus the board. It's you versus the game, which put me in a different design place, because in Risk Legacy I could just say fight it out, right? And if some guy's winning a lot, or some girl's winning a lot, or some person, then the rest of the people just gang up on it. With Pandemic Legacy, when we were designing it, if it's got permanent change and evolving rule state, and the game's just winning time after time, how do we know as designers and have the game back off and then not win anymore? Those are some of the issues. Any other questions or feelings of slight disquietness about this? The other part, which I talked about in emerging narrative, but I didn't really get into, is that in addition to manipulating the components of the game, which seem destructive, but I actually consider just part of my job, I regularly destroy things and remove content in the act of making something, is that there are parts of the game which you are not allowed to get to. It's almost like downloadable content or expansions baked into the box, but instead of saying, well, we're going to play Risk Legacy and then we're going to get this expansion, you earn the right to open the expansion by a narrative moment. Same thing with Pandemic Legacy. So you're playing along, and then you can see in Risk that there are certain boxes, I show it later, but there are certain envelopes and certain boxes saying, you can only open this when this happens in the game. And so someone will, by intention or accident, create that situation, and then you open up the box and you get a narrative twist. Here's what the results are of what you just did. Here are the new rules and the new pieces that you have to integrate. Deal with this now, right? It's usually a lot of what happens. And so I'll talk about it in just a minute, but it keeps you from ever having mastery of the game. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you from feeling like you earn the strategies, and it kind of creates an emerging narrative. Risk Legacy really is a sandbox that allows you to paint it. It's very much a comic book, and it's done purposefully that you can kind of create your world history together, and there's a lot of gaps in it. Pandemic Legacy tells a very tight story that you're along for the ride with. And so there are different narrative experiences that people react to in different ways. Pandemic is getting better reviews than Risk, but Pandemic in general gets better reviews than Risk. So I don't know if it's the base game or I've gotten better at it or what the dog. So how this all came about, I'm just going to do this, is there's certain things that are part of a board game, because a board game is an experience, right? A group of people will agree to sit down and play a game. And so a game has rules. And a lot of people will find, like, what's the game? The game has rules, right? But if you just talk about the rules, like, here are the rules to a game. Everyone can figure it out themselves. Those are the rules for Jenga, for those of you who haven't played Jenga. Those are the entirety of the rules, and they're an ugly spreadsheet. And that by no means encompasses the experience of playing Jenga. Jenga is a very pulse-pounding, tense game where there's one loser and everyone else just survives, right? But the person who loses doesn't really care, and it's a cycle of escalating tension when you're basically like, okay, this tower's about to fall over. I think I can get one pull, and you do one pull, and then you completely relax because you're not going to have another turn, but then the next person succeeds. And the next person succeeds. And then you realize if this person succeeds, it's going to be your turn again, and you just really, really want them to fail so that you don't have to take a turn, and then they succeed, and you don't want to fail. So if you succeed that last time, you can finally relax again, and it's sort of this cycle of tension and dread. To the point where there's a role-playing game called Dread that uses a Jenga tower as its way of deciding if you live or if you die. So what we're not going to get into today are the rules of any of these games. This is a story about the psychology and the experience that goes around the rules. So when people design a game, or when you think about a game, or any creative experience, or like right now, there are certain assumptions about what's going to happen over the next 45 minutes to an hour in this talk, which is I'm going to talk for a while, and you're going to look over my headed slides. I'll say some things that are interesting, some things that are not. Maybe you laugh, maybe you won't. We'll have some questions. None of those things actually have to happen in this talk. Most of them should, right? There's reasons we have cultural assumptions, and so that everyone knows what's going to happen and you don't fear for your life or your sanity at every sort of like encounter. But assumptions also lead us to not breaking outside what the event can be, in this case, the case of a board game. So the assumption is that when you play a board game, it's exactly like Groundhog Day, the movie, in the sense that when you live through it, and then you put it away, and when you take it out, it starts at the same place, and you have the option to manipulate it a little bit, and then it ends in the same place. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but the game just sits there kind of dumb about what you did. So the assumption that I realized is, why do board games have no permanent memory? I have a lot of strange thoughts like that, and most of them result in like, why does the board go on the table? Why isn't it glued under the table? Okay, that's a bad idea, right? And you just move on from it. So some things are there for a reason, but in this case, it's something that sort of jumped out. I'm like, I like role-playing. I like storytelling. I like comic books. Like, all of these things move linearly. Why does a board game cycle? And as a result, why does it have the ability to be infinitely replayable and then sort of bequeathed to your children who will sell it because they're not playing the board games or something? Like, there's certain assumptions about what a game should do and what a game shouldn't do, and when I started poking around in that, the legacy system is what emerged. So there are the rules. We talked about assumptions. What if a game doesn't fully return to its start state every time? What if one game could affect the next? Those are the questions I ask, and how would that make people feel, and how would it change the board game experience? Has anyone seen this chart or some variation of it? It's not the best graphics, because I did not make those graphics. I'd like to apologize. But basically, if you're in an experience, whether it's playing the guitar or playing a game, you start in the lower left, and as time goes by, you get better at it. So usually, like any new experience, you have this immediate jump from I don't know anything to I know something, and you feel really good, and you're in that sort of blue zone and enjoying yourself, and then you get frustrated because you hit your first wall, and if you stay frustrated, you quit. But if you manage to gain a new level of mastery, you continue to stay in the zone until maybe perhaps you're not challenged anymore, and then you get bored and you quit. And so either too much frustration or too much boredom can cause you to lose interest in your activity. And a lot of video game design uses this, which is, hey, I'm on a level and I'm playing and I'm awesome and I'm killing everyone and I don't feel challenged, and now it's not quite so much a God complex anymore. Now I just feel kind of bored because I'm not feeling threatened, and look at the size of that boss. I barely escaped. I'm challenged again. Now I got some new guns, right? And they kind of move you between feeling like fearful that you won't make it and then feeling like very briefly like you've got this level of mastery. And interestingly enough, the reason that line is wiggly is because if you keep someone on an exact 45-degree angle up the middle where they're in the perfect zone, that's also boring, right? If you're perfectly challenged and perfectly bored, then you're sort of in a null state that doesn't exist. So you want to pivot people within that. And so I realized with a legacy game, by constantly changing the rules every game or within a game, you can keep people within that state. I know how to play this. Nope, I don't know how to do that anymore. I had a good game. Oh, look what changed at the end of the game. Now I'm worried about the next game. I had a bad game. Look what changed at the end of the game. Now I can have a good game. And it became a reason to sort of play again by keeping people in this general area. So a game is an experience, and to me the game is, like I pointed out, is not about the rules. It's about it starts at the decision, let's play a game, whether that's done by email or people spontaneously say it, to picking the game, to sitting down, to opening the box, to playing it, to putting it away, to discussing like whether you liked it and what you would change, and whether you're going to keep it or play it again as your favorite game. The whole thing is an experience from start to finish. The middle of which involves rules, but everything else involves like human interaction and tension and all the things that you get from people interacting or from a narrative experience. And so I said, well, I realize if I'm changing things and I'm hiding things, I can actually make this experience better. But in the area of making this experience better and taking more control over it, I'm also doing things like making it limited. I can't allow you to change the game forever because eventually it just doesn't work. So it has to have a beginning and a middle and an end. And I'm like, well, if it has an end and a beginning, well, I can tell a story. The stories have a beginning. I can use a 3-act structure. I can create opening a box and being like, oh, Act 1 is done. Act 2 is starting now. Didn't see this coming. I can make you care about things. I can decide when to reveal something. And if we're all playing together, then we're sort of building a common story, just like those kids in the woods were doing for D&D, where I'm like, oh, I'm part of this, and we built this. And my group will have a completely different story from your group, even though we started in the same place. I was like, that's really cool. But this involves people writing on things and doing permanent changes, and people are going to freak out. And I freaked out. I kind of like thought of the idea, I'm like, noof, put it aside for like 6 months. But ultimately, I decided that the side effects of it could be a benefit for those who opted in, and those who were bothered by it would opt out before starting. And so that the people who opted in were going to be largely okay with it, and that's somewhat the case. And so for me, it was about creating a controlled experience and adding more narrative than I had before. So this is kind of like what you do in a legacy game. At no point does it ask you to burn anything. But it does, if you look, there's some stickers. It says Area 51 is the name of a city. That thing that says Enclave of the Bear, there's like a green sticker at the bottom. You sometimes destroy a card and take it out of your game. And then like you put stickers on cards. So North Africa has 3 stickers on it. And for people with OCD, the one that's upside down, that was put on by someone probably bothers you. It bothers me a little bit. It's permanent. Make it line up. This was done intentionally. The first thing you do when you open Risk Legacy is everyone picks a faction, and then you get it, that faction has 2 green stickers that gives it a permanent power for the rest of your campaign. The first thing you do is you pick one power, and you rip up the other one. This was done, and we'll get into a little more, as part of the ritual of learning what this game is about and realizing that your actions will have consequences, and it was also your last chance to get out if you didn't want to do that. Right? If you sit down, you're like, oh, I've heard good things about that. Can you rip up this card? You're like, no. Like, why not? Like, I might need it later. You don't. You have one choice to use a green sticker. Yeah, but it's a sticker. Which is interesting, because if you stop and think about this, it's a sticker. You have ripped a sticker before. You have opened a box. You have thrown away cardboard. You have destroyed a piece of paper. You have all recycled or thrown away a piece of paper today. That paper had printing on it. You didn't care. This is a piece of paper that has printing on it, and you care. And it's a very interesting thing that we've all been indoctrinated, that games or certain things have a value that is far outside the actual intrinsic value of it. I think it's fantastic. I think that destroying a card being awful is cool because it's visceral and it feels real. If you're like, can you rip up this piece of scrap paper I'm throwing away? Okay. How did that feel? Kind of boring. Right? Can you rip up this playing card? Oh, come on, man. It's a 6 of diamonds, and you can't use that deck anymore, right? Like, it has a meaning that's far beyond it. So to leverage this well, or my attempt to do it well, creates moments like, spoiler alert here, Darth Vader's Luke's father, right? So you can create these moments where you don't see things coming, and you can create moments which feel very impactful, which we'll kind of touch in a little bit. So what I'd like to do now is I went through and I took some reviews from Pandemic Legacy and Risk Legacy and some comments, actually, from Board Game Geek and Kotaku had an article on it. And I'm putting them up here because I wanted to see what other people thought of this game as I was putting my presentation together. And someone said, well, this blew my socks off. That's good. I'll take it. What's interesting in none of these, and I really had a hard time finding, is no one comments about the rules. I have not seen a single evaluation or comment that says this played well. I mean, they'll be like, this ran a little long, or, by game 8, I wasn't that into it as I was. That's fine. But very people say, I don't like this rule, I don't like the rules, have melted away. What everyone is focusing on is, did they like the experience, which is exactly what I wanted them to focus on, and not the rules. Because there's rules in probably both games where I'm like, they're okay. But the way they came out, the way they get integrated, the way we do it, they make it much more exciting. Played the first 2 months now, and I'm addicted. It hit me like Game of Thrones. I want to play the next time immediately to see what happens next. This is exactly what we wanted. At the end of the game, whether it's risk or pandemic, you get to make some permanent changes that will affect the start of your next game. You get to put stickers on things, you get to upgrade things, you get to deal with things. And there's a very good reason that's done at the end of the game, because it creates a cliffhanger. So you get to the end of the game, you've won, you've lost, you've survived, you're like, all right, what are my rewards for going through this? And you talk about it either individually or as a group, depending on which game, and then you decide, and then you sit back and you go, that's going to make my army a lot more powerful. We should start that again. I want to see how this power works. And then you get to the end of that one, and you do it again, and you do it again. So it is deliberately incentivizing you to think about the game as soon as you finish the game and before you start the next game, and thinking about what you're going to do different. And maybe, like, I was choosing between these 2 powers, and I picked this one, but if I win next game, I can take it. And now you're projecting out a long-term plan over something that's no longer cyclical, but linear. So, I talked about the 4 experiences at the beginning, middle, and end, stories at the beginning, middle, and end, games at the beginning and the middle. Right? That's what I realized by this. Like, wow, if you create a campaign, you create a beginning and a middle and an end. Fantastic. I love it. Now we're into storytelling. So how does this differ from other types of storytelling, right? And I put some up here, and it's by no means an exhaustive list, and I'm by no means an expert in literature or storytelling. These are just sort of my takes on it. A novel is great. It's a full story. You have 0 influence over a novel. If you read it again, I will tell you it'll be exactly the same. You may notice things that weren't there, you didn't notice before, but the book did not change. Really good. It gives you a lot of character. TV, serialized story, again, no influence, unless it's a strange reality show or something, and it's the illusion of influence. Digital games. You have semi-influential narrative, but it's really minimal influence. If it's a narrative-driven game, you're going to get to the ending or one of the other 3 endings, but it's pretty cool. Role-playing games, serialized story, major influence. I say variable tension, because it really depends on who's running the game. Some people will love to kill you, some people are bad at setting plot hooks, some people like, well, wow, we've been for 3 adventures, we've been in this town buying things, right? Like, it's up to the person to set it, but when it works very, very well, and when it doesn't work, it falls a little bit flat. So I was like, how do I take some of these things and use them? How do I take strong characters? How do I take cliffhangers? How do I take... Digital games are very, very good at slow rules immersion, right? The issue with a board game is you have to kind of sit down, read all the rules, and then someone has to explain the rules to someone else. It's like reading comprehension and an oral presentation, and then everyone has to fully immerse and digest and integrate all the rules before you start, because then you'll get halfway through and you've broken the game because someone didn't understand the rules. It's weird, board games crash because someone like halfway through is like, oh, I didn't know that's how you win. I would have done something differently. You're like, oh, over? Like, do you want to keep playing? Like, you crashed this. Right? So it's got this so by realizing, by opening up content little by little, I was in a position to say, here's the game, it's pandemic, it's risk. Okay, by the way, here's one more thing. But that one more thing isn't one more rule, it's here's one more thing that you open like a maniac, like out of a box on Christmas morning, and it's one more rule, but it's also like a narrative twist that you didn't expect. So you don't go, there's another rule, you're like, yeah! Look what we get to do now! Learn another rule! Right? It's the exact same thing, it's just positioned and framed in a different way. In like role-playing games, I wanted to take the shared storytelling that only comes from multiple people having the same experience and do it here so that people will talk about it after and look forward to the next event. I'm not sure it's possible to say enough good things. I have some negative ones, though. Right? So I'm not sure it's possible to say enough good things about this game. My mom did not write that. The core is still risk, goes a lot faster, changing concept. In our first session, we played 6 games in a row. We were looking for Netflix. Binge playing. There are very few times you get done a board game and have any reason to play it a second time other than, I like that. You want to play it again? No, what else you got? Let's play something else. We'll play that tomorrow. Very rare, like, again, re-rack it, again. Maybe a cooperative game that you lost to, and you're like, I want to beat that, right? People ran through Pandemic Legacy as if they were going to die if they didn't finish it in a weekend. I do not recommend doing that. That is literally like, hey, Netflix, Daredevil, and then 19 hours later wondering why you're still there and what happened, right? Like, doesn't make it better, but there's a way you can keep playing it. There's a reason to keep doing it. This all leads to, anything in brackets is my comments on their comments. The more you're committed, the better the experience. If you're invested, and you're involved, and you're making changes, and you have co-ownership of the game, which you do by changing it, as soon as you put the first sticker down, as soon as you name your tribe, like, poop, which I gotta tell you, when you name in this game, everyone does immediately, you're like, okay, mine went there. All right, right? I was like, oh, let me look for names. I can show people. Oh, okay, like a quick search. Like, okay, everyone is in 5th grade when they name stuff. What I didn't really get into here, which I should have, is the power of naming. I left out the pictures, but I really should have talked about it anyway. You have ownership. You name a tribe. You name a power. You name a city. You name a disease and pandemic. Suddenly, that is your world. And like my favorite disease name from Pandemic Legacy playtesting was the Paris Hilton shingles, which I don't even know what it is, but everyone reacts that way, right? Everyone, okay. And it made it like that. It wasn't like the yellow disease. It was, we got to take care of PH shingles, right? And start getting abbreviations, and you name your character in Pandemic Legacy, and like, okay, Jennifer Lopez can handle that. Some reason someone names. I'm just thinking of playtesting names. And as soon as you start calling anything by a name that you created, you own a piece of that, and you are connected to it in a way that even if it was like, here's a list of 5 names, you get to pick one, completely different. There's also a lot of naming is done in both of these games at the end of the game, because I've seen more people at the end of Risk Legacy sit at the table for an hour because of a name than a power. Like, I got a city. What city name? I want. It has to be mean to the guy I don't like, but not something I can't show my kids. And the inside joke, and they will sit, they'll like sweat, right? And then they're like, well, no, that's not, and they'll like run it by people and stuff. Like, it's very, very powerful to say, I'm naming something and I'm making it permanent. It's funny because most city names in the real world are not permanent at all. It just takes a while before they turn over. So here it is. We start to make choices between short-term wins and long-term wins. That is fascinating to me. The smaller choices have huge repercussions in future games. One thing we wanted people to do is say, all right, you've got a decision right now. You don't know all the repercussions of that decision, which is exactly true like real life. You usually can tell the short-term repercussions, but when you get older, like my age, you look back like, what if I hadn't done that? Then I wouldn't have met my wife. And I know that I would have met someone else and probably married, but I'm like, I have no idea what my life would have looked like. Right? You could decide to do any particular day, you're like, I'm going to wear this shirt, it's nice. Meaningless decision. Someone comments, compliment you on the shirt, you hit it off, you marry them. I mean, that's kind of scary that little decision, which you have no idea what the consequences are, will define the rest of your life. We don't get paralyzed by it. Our brain trains us not to think like that. But so we wanted to put that in there. It's like you do something, and then 8 games later you open something else. You're like, oh, that thing I did. I shouldn't have done that. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was going to be that bad. And everyone looks at you and it's like, come on, why did you do that thing? Like, but I won. I won that game. So that's pretty good. So the more you're making decisions, the more you're owning the decisions, the more this is not my game that I designed, this is more your game that you finished the design on. And that's another way I think of legacy games. Like, I'll do the first 80 or 90%, you take the last 10 or 20%, make it your own. Rip this up, add this, put this here, choose this power. It's your control. You're a designer now, but you're not sitting down as a designer, you're sitting down as a person trying to win. And so your decisions are based on winning, not on design. Like the TV series, we covered this, only in April. Like the best game experience I will have this year, if not ever. I just had to put that in because I worked like a year on it. I like this game, and I hate this game so much for what it just pulled. Also, I am now very afraid for my poor, thus far unscarred character. All right, it's a piece of paper that you put a name on, and it can get scars. This is from Pandemic. You learn this in the rules, it's not a spoiler. If you end up in the wrong place at the wrong time and there's a disease, you'll get scarred. And you can pick your scar. I'm afraid of flights, I'm paranoid, I'm sullen, I'm moody, I forget what they all are right now. Why does this person care about a piece of paper? If that character dies, you take another character. right? All of a sudden, this is not you. This is what you try to get in role-playing. It's like, no, I don't want this to happen to me. It's not you. I don't want that to happen to them because I always play them. We've been through a lot together. Like, no, they haven't. It's a piece of paper, right? So the more you play with it, the more you get invested. And so you're starting to do some things that I was hoping you would do by, getting a connection to a book character you didn't want to die, or a TV character who gets written out, that you form an attachment that you wouldn't otherwise from a game that's cyclical. All right, so let's talk about the one-way trip. When you play Risk Legacy, you play Pandemic Legacy, you buy the game. When you get to the end of the game, it stabilizes. You can kind of play around with it. The story's over. First viewer says, go home. It's over. What are you still doing here? That's a real double-edged sword. And as we're about to get into, there's a lot of things that work with it. Actually, I think the positives far outweigh the negatives, so I wouldn't have done it. I'm not interested in just grabbing people's money or giving them a disposable experience. What I'm interested in is giving the best experience possible. And I found that putting real stakes on the line makes that important. And some people say, who's played poker for no money? How fun was it? It's not a very good game unless you sweat a little bit, right? And it doesn't have to be real money. It's like, all right, whoever loses goes and gets the pizza. I don't want to get the pizza, right? It doesn't matter that the stakes are small. The stakes are real. So when you buy a legacy game, you're paying real money for a game. And you know you're only going through it once unless you pay again. And I realized after the fact, not as some insidious design, marketing, Machiavellian fact, I'm like, you spent some real money on this. This is the ante that you put on the table that you're going to have a good experience. And you're putting your faith in me as a designer, which panics me now that I realize it, that you're going to get your money's worth. That raises the stakes. It's not just the fact that I put a sticker on a card that's permanent. It's I put a sticker on a card that I bought. And if this all goes wrong or I don't like it, I spent money on it. Right? We all spend money on things we regret. So it makes it much more intense. If it's free, it'll still be intense. But people are like, I'm nervous. I've been seeing on Twitter lately, I'm really nervous. I've had nightmares. I'm looking forward to the game tonight, but I'm worried what's going to happen. We've won 2 in a row. We're probably going to lose. Then what happens? Like the stakes make it real, and it's real because it's permanent. And I realized after the fact because there is money that was involved. Now, it's not a tremendous sum of money, even compared to other board games, but it's not no money, and I recognize that. And I always spend every effort to make sure the games don't get to a certain point, because I'll say, look, if it costs this much, no one's going to write on it. I wouldn't write on it. Right? You have to look at the amount of games you're playing, the amount of time you spend playing a game, the number of people who play, and the amount that you're paying compared to either other games or other forms of entertainment. Rituals. I don't remember why the slide is here. Here's a ripped card. It's just in the wrong spot. I was rearranging some stuff before we came in here, and I forgot to move the slide. This is where I talked about that rituals are important, that the game starts before you actually start playing. What I did on Risk Legacy, you can just see the top of that red, and I think it says the word note. So the game opens up like a briefcase, like a pizza box, I guess you would call it. And it's sealed with a sticker, which is largely you can just put a sticker there so it doesn't open up in transit. But I decided to put on the sticker, note, what's done can never be undone. So the very first thing you have to do in the game is cut that sticker. It's kind of meaningless, but the whole thing is to ground you. Like, oh, we're in it now. Look what I did. You opened the box. Right? So it's changing some things and turning them on their head. There we go. Let's talk about some negative things. Sounds like a gimmick over a quality game. Absolutely, it's a gimmick. Everything's a gimmick. Right? It's an idea. It depends how you define gimmick. It's like a new way to think about things that some people will see like, it's a gimmick. It doesn't fit my preconceived notion of what a game is and what a game should be. Therefore, it's a gimmick. Therefore, I don't like it. That's fine. I understand. So I start trolling those people. One thing that's in Risk Legacy, which I cannot justify at all in any particular way as a design choice, was the do not open ever envelope. You can see the box on the right is opened up like the pizza box, and there are 4 envelopes taped across the top that tell you when you open them. And the box stays open deliberately, so when you're playing, you have this visual reminder to look at those and see if you hit any of the triggers and to kind of tempt you or entice you to hit one of those triggers. And then there is a plastic vacuum form tray, those black trays that are always in games, that store your pieces. Nowhere does it tell you underneath that tray is another envelope saying do not open ever. And the reason was that it was in there is I started joking around that I was going to put an envelope in that says open when instructed and then never give the instructions just to see if I could drive people crazy, which I would never do because that's actually mean and would cause lots of questions like, I never found it. So people kept asking me if I was going to put it in. And then I realized that first decision I talked about where you rip up you have to put a power down and then rip up another power. There were going to be a number of people who did not want to do that. So they're going to say, I'm just going to keep this card, but I'm going to put it out of sight. And they will pick up the back tray to hide that card under there. And I will say, ha, I see you're not ripping up the card, and I raise you with this moral dilemma. Because nowhere does it actually tell you to open it. And in fact, there are 4 different versions of that envelope. So if you ask me, I cannot tell you what's in your game. Other than I can tell you that you have a 25% chance of it being good. And sometimes it affects only the people who are there when it's open, and sometimes it affects everyone. So given all of these parameters, you still have to decide whether you want to open it or not, and whether you want to be there or not. That's probably the closest I came to any true psychology or any sort of just strange manipulation here, because there is literally no reason to open it, and you can have a perfectly good game. And what I've discovered is every group created their own ritual of when they would open. Okay, if someone wins 3 games in a row, they get the right to open it. If we get to game 10, someone will open it. When we finish at 15, we'll open it. If you bought a board game and there was an expansion, people are like, hey, do you want it? And I'm not going to reveal what's in it. It's like, oh, do you want to play the expansion with the NHL hockey players? Like, I don't really like it. It's kind of dumb. Okay? If you have an envelope that says do not open ever, and you all, for whatever reason, decide you're going to open it, and you open it and you take out what's in it, and you don't like it, you don't have to play it. But everyone does. They open it like, that's awful. I wish we hadn't opened it. Well, we got to play it now. You don't have to play it. You decide, you made this into a thing that had reviews. Like, that's dumb. I don't like it. I'm not playing it. I will not yell at you. So that's like an interesting thing. Like, I was just at that point like, sure, whatever, put that in the bottom of the box. Let's have fun with that. And it's funny because Pandemic Legacy comes in a blue box and a red box, which is a publisher's decision. And it's purely because the woman who runs the company, noticed that with Risk Legacy, people tended to buy 2 copies, either one to keep for later when their kids are older, or these are my friends, or these are my family. So like, I'll just make 2 different versions so people can, we can create a little buzz around which cover do you like better, and you can buy 2 if you want, or I like the red, I'm going to play with my friends, I'll get the blue later. But everyone's going to walk out to me like, 2 versions, huh? Like they're exactly the same, publisher's decision. Look forward to finding out. It's exactly the same. If it wasn't the same, I would tell you, you'll see. It's the same. But I've seen a whole blog article like, Matt and Rob are way too smart to make it the same no matter what they say. I'm like, it's gone too far. It's just the same. They line up, they make a circle. It's really cool. So let's look at some other reviews about people who have issues, right? It seems rather silly to charge this price for a game you break down when they could have easily made it from durable material and have it last. Well, it is durable material, and it will last if you don't rip anything up, but you don't get everything that I've been trying to do up to that point. When you're like, okay, and again, this is all available at the beginning of the pandemic. This city just had an outbreak. It's now moved to the next level of rioting. Put a sticker on the board. You could kind of put a die and then take a picture, and then the next game set it up. But you put that sticker on the board, you're like, I didn't like how that felt, and I don't want it to happen again. Therefore, I'm going to play better. You can't get that with a temporary thing, because there is a number of people in here, and you would all say you wouldn't do it. And a large percentage, myself included, probably get to game 5 and go, we kind of screwed this up, let's reset it. You're like, you're not supposed to. I don't like it, let's reset it. Let's do it again. Let's put it all back. And now we know how to play. Let's do it again. Right? That's not how life works. There's a tremendous number of people who are going to have regretful tattoos. Right? And it's very different from a temporary tattoo. Right? You can look back like, what's that, Grandpa? Like, you know what? Life just happened. Right? We're just going to move on. So, yes, it could have been made for more durable people. And I've seen, we'll get into it in a little bit, a number of people who have come up with incredibly elaborate ways to spend $100 to make their $30 or $50 game playable twice. Okay? It's a psychological break. I'm 100% fine with it. I just feel like it's not the experience I was going for. When it's real money, when it's a one-way trip, when you're sitting there going, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do? And you're like, it's like choose your own adventure book. I'm going to open the captain. Nope, I'm going to go. Yeah, that's the one I wanted, right? As soon as you see the end, you're like, no, I didn't do that, right? So I wanted to take away the safety net. So you have to walk the tight wire without it. I, for one, don't have fun ripping and mutilating something I spent $50 on. This guy never goes out to dinner, right? Or orders meat. Because that's what this is. It's an experience. There's no reason why this has to be it's end condition and the start condition have to be the same. And I actually want to say, like, I get why all these people feel this way. It's just missing the point of what I was trying to do. And it's fine. Don't buy it. Like, I don't like this. I don't want to buy it. It's great. But I'm just trying to get up here and say, like, this is what I was trying to do. These are the side effects that come from doing that. And then someone else made a comment to this comment, which my little note. Experience design is not product design. Some experiences can only be done once. You can only be a kid once. You know, like, I told people, they're like, I don't want to buy this because you can only do it once. I'm like, well, by once you mean like 18 or 20 games. So let's just define that. And the second thing is, you want an album and I'm giving you a concert. That's it. You went to the concert, you spent $50, you saw the concert, like, I really liked it. I want to go again. I already spent my $50. Like, no, you got to buy another ticket to see the next concert. If you want to get the album and hear the exact same thing every time, get the album. It's fantastic. They're just very different experiences. One's a product, one's an experience. Going out to dinner, going to a sporting event, falling in love for the first time. Like, these are experiences, and they're special because they're transitory. Because you can go back and, like, you go to a concert, I loved it. You go to a concert again, I loved it. You go to a concert with time. It's kind of the same set list. It says the same joke every time. I don't like it as much. Like, just love the experience that you had. So someone said, I don't want to spend $50. I just for one. Someone said, you pay $50 a month for World of Warcraft for people, and then at the end you have nothing to show for it because it was a subscription-based entertainment. So there are models in gaming to spend money for something that at the end you cannot do again. If you want to play World of Warcraft or any online thing for another month, and I know the pricing models have changed on these, then you have to keep paying money to have that experience. So it moves it into a new category away from consumer box good to you're paying for an experience that uses physical components to create this experience. And that's a mental shift that right now is kind of engaging for a lot of people, kind of upsetting to other people, and then who knows 5 years from now, maybe no one's doing it, maybe everyone's doing it, maybe it's awful. I don't know. But right now it's sort of it's a mental shift, which I think creates some of the interesting static. Why did that go back up? Why legacy? Restarting the game implies buying again at the store. No way. Like, people just don't want that. That's fine. I've kind of covered it. But I would like to point this out. Hasbro, when I worked at Hasbro, the average board game family plays 2 to 3 times a year. And I couldn't get numbers for the other one, but there was something called the cult of the new amongst hobby games, which is, if you get this game, I loved it. I played it like 3 times, and I moved on to the next game that came out the next week. Like, there's a desire to consume new material. And so there are people who play a game, I love this game, I've played it 50, 60, 70 times. So then playing a game only 18 to 20 times is horrible. But very few people play every game that many times. Most of the time they play a game once or twice, or if they really love it, they play it like 40 times. And so I'm like, well, how can I do something that kind of goes in the middle? How can I give you something that's 20 games of entertainment, and then we move on, and then you go buy a new game and play? Because you're going to buy a new game anyway, but instead of playing mine 3 times, please play it 18. So this is what I said to the interviews, like, well, you can only play it 15 to 18 times. I said, no, I gave you a reason to play it 18 times. Up until now, you just had to hope you liked it enough to want to play it 18 times. And you know what? Game 18 is going to be largely the same as 12, which is largely the same as 5. And if that game is really, really good, you'll enjoy it. But I will give you 18 very, very different games that you will be personally invested in. But at the end of it, it's an experience and you can't quite do it again. You could start over and you could do it differently. But really, this is just trying to give you the first-time experience of something. This is long, but this is someone's patch to not make it disposable. It's an augmented reality board game with animated cards and 3D animated characters that moves on the board. I probably think it's going to be more than $50 to make the virtual reality, augmented reality game. And it kind of gets away from the fact that if you're not tangibly touching and manipulating things, you've missed what I'm trying to do. Or I don't think it'll work as well. If someone makes this, and I may love it, I can't see. It's not what I'm trying to do. Same thing, other person's like virtual reality and augmented reality goggles to mimic the feeling of tearing a card. So there are a lot of people who don't want to tear a card, and there's a lot of ways to avoid tearing a card. And I think they're like interesting solutions, but they are like sort of end runs around an awkward, uncomfortable thing that actually can lead to a more visceral and entertaining experience. Another influence for me for making these games, I was a big comic book collector when I was a kid. This is when comic books really took off as a collectible thing. They're all worthless now because everyone did this. And so I would, sleeve them and bag them and keep them, and I would never eat food and don't roll them back. And they became like enjoyable but fussy. And then I was living in New York City right out of college, and some guy was selling a pile of half-beaten up comics, which I realize now were all stolen. And he's like, $20, you can have all these comics. I'm like, yeah, and they were already beaten up. And I went back to my apartment in New York, and I spent like a week like throwing them around, folding them back. Like they were worthless already. And I was like, I got out all of my frustration of not being able to enjoy my comics on these comics. This is what legacy games have done for some people. They're like, I sleeve my cards, I don't shuffle my cards. I got to this, it's like, oh my gosh, I can finally just relax, pour soda on it. Like when I was playtesting Risk Legacy, one of my friends spilled her scotch all over the board. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that was the best thing look, you wrote on it. Like, I don't care if there's a big scotch stain. And for some people, it's like, this is liberating. Like once every couple of years, I can buy one of these and get it out of my system. Right? The rest of my games are fine. I don't like kick my games around the house and stuff like that. This one gets me because I hear this. You can play it only once, and by once they mean 18 times, and then it's pretty much reduced to playing the final round only, which I like to describe as exactly like every other game in your collection. Right? So, you're going to play this 18 times, and then like with Risk, at the end you just play your version of Risk on it, and you play at the same time, and it's the same game, and you take it out, and it doesn't change, and you just kind of play it forever, and it's the same old thing. And I'm like, that's a game. You just described every other game you have. Why is this bad? And then I realized that the sense of loss is perceived more than the sense of getting something extra. We gave you something new, and when the new goes away, you're sad it's gone. And so instead of saying, like, oh, this is cool, it went down to everything else I have, instead you're like, this is somehow below everything else I have because it started in a place that was different and more interesting. So I can't get around that one, but I'm always like, wait. I really worked hard to try to get you something at the end that was just like everything else. This one I just think is funny because they called it cardboard rights management. And I thought that was a very clever phrase, the person who pandemic legacy. I can assure you this is not at all the reason behind these games. Right? I've heard a lot of it's a marketing ploy, it's by multiple games. I never considered when doing Risk Legacy that anyone would buy this more than once. I thought 15 people would buy it and I'd be laughed out of the industry. And so I'm like, well, if people really liked it and they want to play again, that means they had a really good 15 games or 20 games and they want to buy another 15 or 20. It's probably a pretty good value. But I just always like to point out this was not a marketing ploy. This was not business people figuring out how to make disposable games. And I hope not every game in the world becomes a legacy game. I hope this doesn't shift the genre like mobile games all free to play now and then incremental purchases and things like that. Like, it's just something I tried. Worked for some people. I think this one I agree. It's still pandemic. Still Risk. Yes. If you do not like the original, if you hate the original, you will not like these. If you're ambivalent, I'd like to think I added something that would make it more interesting. If you like the original, this should be right up your alley. It does not magically transform a game you dislike into a game you like. This one is my favorite. This is where we're going to wrap it up. This is just such a well-written dig. You can just skip to the bottom line. Possibly the most overhyped turd on Board Game Geek. The actual one was way too much to put in here. And I say it because kudos to the person who wrote it. I love a good teardown. Like I keep reading it, I'm like, oh, man, it's just one twist after another. So I just read that, and like part of it was like, hey, and then I'm like, that's great. This one's about Risk Legacy. Risk has a lot of randomness. It was a game from 1959. It inspired a lot of games. It hasn't held up as a general engine to modern gaming, especially if you like European gaming. Great, no problem. Right? I try to do something interesting. So to wrap up this part, And before we go into questions, because I know I threw a lot about what I was trying to do out there, I want to circle back to the guy in the back to see if you've softened your opinion at all, or if you still hate it, which is fine. I don't really care. At least I wanted to know if like what I was trying to do resonated, even if it's not for you. I just wanted to basically go back to what the hell am I doing? I'm having fun. I'm just trying to tell a story. I'm like, hey, I was 11 and I read a Wolverine comic and that was cool. And then I was an elf with a sword and I ran down in a dungeon and I had a memory that I'll have forever. I just want to make those. That's really it. Like, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. So that's really it. It's kind of a run through of some of the design intent, hopefully psychology enough. That is really like a design. And so at this point, I just want to see if anyone has any questions, anything you want me to dig into deeper. The big challenge with putting this together wasn't what to say, but how to make it like half an hour or 40 minutes as opposed to 4 hours. And then having been here today, it was kind of to get to look like an hour and rearrange some stuff. So hopefully it worked out for you. So with that, does anyone have anything that they want me to dig into, follow up, talk about?
Not really a legacy question, but
Fun. Oh, how do I make a game fun? Well, some people say I can, because not every game's for everyone. It's like music or food. Designing a game is tedious, but enjoyable and rewarding, because I had some people play test one of my games today, and it was fun. Right? It had its flaws, it had its weaknesses. You just keep playing a game that's bad, and when you do enough game design, you start to see what's bad and then how to fix it, and then you get the tools out of it. So I always like to say it's a craft like cooking, like learn the rules and learn how to break them, learn how to put things together in a different way. It's just it's an iterative process, and you start to learn the tells from your playtest group. People take out a phone, they're not engaged. People ask how many turns left, they're not engaged. People say, oh, I've already lost. People keep asking about the same rule, your rules are too fussy. I have a game that I'm working on now. It is a Cthulhu game, but I don't like Cthulhu, so I made it. I was tired of Cthulhu games that the characters always went crazy, but the players were sane. So I said, let's cut out the middleman and make the players crazy. And it's not done, and it'll be out like another year and a half. But I had a prototype at Gen Con, and like, this is the best thing that's ever happened. He went up to our room, grabbed the prototype to play, and said, I couldn't find you, but I want to show my friends this game. I'm like, okay, that one's nearly done. I mean, I got to balance it, but it's when I ask my friends, like, I got a game, like, which one is it? And it's this one. I'm going, and okay, like, I'm really off track on that one. Find a new group that isn't burned out. But it's iterative. It's like, the hard part is realizing why it's not working, being able to break that down into a series of little, like, concrete things you want to fix, not fixing them by adding more rules, by fixing them by taking away or changing the rules you have, and then getting right back out there to test it, which is the equivalent of getting punched in the face, figuring out why you got punched in the face, changing your stance, and getting punched in the face again. Right? So it takes a certain amount of like, oh, okay, let's do it, let's play test it again, to get past that.
I'm curious, is it hard to play test a game like Pandemic Legacy, where like a lot of the experience is tied up in like plot twists and surprises? Like, do you have a problem once playtesters have seen certain things?
Yeah,
you don't enjoy it as much.
You got to cycle through playtesters, right? And the problem is if you get someone to play one game 15 times, you're like, you played a lot. Regular game. You're like, I played this 15 times, okay, you played it once. Right? So the amount of time it takes to play test is magnified roughly by the amount of games in your campaign. Which is why I'm working on this game Seafall, which I thought was going to be out last year. I'm fighting to get it out next year because it's a real meaty age of exploration, see the world, find islands, a story emerges. But it takes like 2 hours to play a game. Pandemic takes like 45 minutes, and people already knew it. So it will give you a lot of entertainment. It's like, ooh, game 13, something went wrong. Okay, I got to find another group to spend 30 hours to get back to game 13. The big thing I wanted to say is there's a cone. Right? Game 1 starts the same. But as the further it gets away from game 1, the less visibility I have as a designer to what your world looks like. And so I have to make sure that the game never gets outside the cone where it breaks. And I do that by trying to put invisible rails on, like it won't go past a certain point or a certain point, but mostly I put, and when I say I mean anyone I'm designing with and stuff, I'm just shorthanding it. Put tools in to allow the players to fix the problems that they've created in the world that I don't know. Like, well, they could make this too bad. We'll give them this power. They could have realized too late that they needed to do this. We'll give them this upgrade. Right? So I don't know where the trouble spots are going to be after game 10, but if I've given you the tools to fix them and you're paying attention, then you'll fix your game and get it back on track as you're motivated.
Depending on like how logical someone is who's playing like this legacy or like legacy, will that affect how much fun they have playing games? Yeah, I've never played games before, but this is what I want to. And I'm not like the best board game player, so I was wondering if I went into some situation and wanted to play it, you know, are there certain skills that I already have to be able to make that fun experience, or is it just something that you go into it, you just read the rules, it's pretty, you know, easy to understand, and then you just go from there?
In your case, I would recommend Pandemic Legacy for a couple of reasons. It's not as angry. Right? Risk makes you it really builds up the tension. It's also a cooperative game, so as long as you're playing with a couple people or at least one person who's played Pandemic, like you can play a regular game of Pandemic, and then you can say like, oh, I get the rules, and you can, sorry, I'm just trying to.
And then it becomes like more fun.
Right. So what you can do, we even say it in Pandemic Legacy, is, hey, if you haven't played Pandemic or you're rusty, like, just ignore all this legacy stuff and just play Pandemic a few times on this board to like, oh, this is how you play the game. And since it's cooperative, if done right, everyone's as a team and you're playing together. Done wrong with Pandemic, one person tells everyone what to do. And then you eventually realize, like, I need to go in the other room and you just play the game and tell us how it turned out, right? So that's the sort of quarterbacking syndrome in a cooperative game can be an issue.
Board games, how do you deal with the difficulty in introducing new mechanics in a game in a way that where digital games, they introduce a new mechanic, and usually that changes very little. With board games, you have to introduce new physical components and significantly increase the learning curve in teaching a game. Like Visceral House of Hell, where there's like all these different tiles.
Yeah, that's one of mine. I create big messes.
Those are some of my favorite games.
Yeah.
I find getting someone new to play it.
Sure,
Walk them through it.
It's a constant struggle to figure out it. Like I said, it's a very unique medium, which is, you want to have fun? Yeah. All right. Let me talk to you for half an hour. I want to have fun. Shh. You're going to have to learn some things. And there's some math. Like, when does the fun start? Stop interrupting. Right? And then there's two types of people. There's the people who want to learn every single rule, so when they get halfway through their first game, they can't go, oh, if I'd known that, I would have done this all differently. I don't even want to play anymore. I can't win. Then the other people who 5 seconds in go, let's just start, I'll figure it out. Neither of which is a great solution. Right? So I have struggled very much with what is the introduction to any game. Some people are very good at explaining games. If you've played a game and you can be an ambassador to a game, I love just-in-time rules. Right? You just ask people, hey, I want you to play a game. It's got a lot of stuff at it. If you don't mind not winning, let's just blow through like half an hour and then we'll start over. Like for Betrayal at House on the Hill. We're all in a house. It's haunted. But you don't know. We're all in a house. It's abandoned. I hope I didn't get anything away. And it's like, what do you want to do? Just, I don't know. Can I go in a room? Sure, go in a room. Then flip it over and then explain what to do. And then like, okay, you have to roll something. You see it says a sanity check. What's your number of sanity? 4. That means roll 4 dice. Okay. Like, they don't need to know about the haunt or the triggers of the haunt or combat, right? You can get people playing a game just like right away and then tell them, but you have to sort of give them a preamble. Now, from a designer doing a legacy game, we try to introduce new rules and materials as much as possible in between games. Right? What you don't want is like, we're playing a game, and you open up this new box, and you're like, okay, half an hour later, whose turn was it? Like, that just kills the momentum. So, as much as possible, you want to be like, okay, the game's ended, here's some new goodies. And you're like, oh, this will be cool. And again, it's that cliffhanger thing. Because you just learned one thing, like, oh, that would really solve the problem we had here, either in Risk or, Pandemic. And then, wow, I want to see how that works. I've learned one new thing, and then we start playing again. Does that answer your question?
I think so. It's one of those,
it's one of those things that I don't have an answer for because it's a medium that doesn't have a good solution, right? Like, how many times you played a video game, it's like, all right, soldier, you're going to duck for 3 minutes. Like, oh, okay, duck under this, duck, I get it. Why is duck? I get it. Right? But it works because it tells you, like, this is And you can't fall off the, like, it appears you're trying to sell, like, push this button, right? It notices in real time, and this is a kind of a analog, wonky, 150-year-old medium that doesn't have that. So it requires ambassadors and people to do it, and it's flawed, right? So I always think, like, every time, how can I make this game better to understand other than a rule book? And then it's a rule book. Right, and so one version of Risk I did in 2007, I took the rule book and I separated into, here's how you move, here's how you attack, here's how you defend, and I kind of put it in the dossier, here's how you set up. We told people, like, look, just take the setup card, learn to set up, put it away, then give everyone else a card, and then they're responsible for one section of the rules. Attack question, go to this person, defense, go to this person. Oh, did people hate that? They're like, what do I read first? Like, nothing. Like, it's all out of order. I don't and it was like, really, like, attack was blue, and it was like, or whatever, red, it was the same color as the dot. Like, everything was really designed as an experience to have, like, this hive mind shared knowledge, and all people can think about is you have a book where all the pages fell out. Because they're conditioned to, this is like one of those assumptions, like, why does a game need a rule book? Take the pages out and reverse it. This is one of those assumptions that I did not solve with a different solution. So I'm trying, other people are trying, video rules are better. Watch it play is a big thing. Most publishers now, like, in the rule book, so it's like, hey, don't feel like reading the rules? Just go to this video link and watch someone, because it's much easier to watch for 5 minutes and everyone can watch together. But it's still it's still a long-term problem with emerging solutions. Oh, sorry, I saw one question he was waiting patiently.
Quick question. I know obviously people are really divided whether or not they like the game because it's new design or they don't like the game because it's new design. My question is, how did publishers take it? How did you manage to sell this brand new idea?
Oh, I wish I had time to talk about that. Oh wow, we are running late, sorry. Basically, Hasbro had no idea they were publishing it. It's the short thing. When you have a very large corporation and you've worked there for a very long time, you can go deep stealth. So it's not that they didn't know, it's that once I got the buy-off at the beginning, I'm like, okay, thank you very much. And I did elaborate things like talking Germany into publishing it first, so they would build the tools, so the tools were already done, and then sending like a stealth DVD to a distributor at Comic-Con, to a salesperson who sold toys, and said, just show this, you'll get sales. Like, what is it? Doesn't matter. I made a DVD. Just put it in. Yeah, so I used Hasbro to kickstart Risk Legacy. So it is far later than I thought. I apologize for that. You've been very patient. We have to get to dinner, I think, but if anyone had a question that I didn't get to, I'm happy to answer it up here for a few minutes. I don't have a lot of time, and I'm just going to go close in the back. Feel better, worse, the same?
A little better.
Okay, a little better. I'll take it. All right, one person at a time. Okay, so thank you for all your patience, and hopefully I encourage you to play one or two more board games you like, because they're kind of cool.